Good morning. We're going to be talking about Satir model today. I pre-recorded this just because I found it easier to do that. Satir model therapy was developed through many hours of observation, hypothesis testing, and intervention based on the belief that people have internal resources that can be harnessed for making better and healthier choices to live a successful life. She saw herself as innovator and independent thinker instead of a follower. Her model helped develop two important concepts relating to helping grow and to be healthy. The first concept was based on the paradigm shift away from old linear single cause and effect thinking to systems thinking advocated by Korpsky. The second, based on the positive approach of Kierkegaard, Buber, and Heidegger, that human being by nature manifests positive life energy, and that this energy can be tapped into to help transform people's dysfunctional existence to a high level of self-care within the context of health, their self-esteem. She believed that human beings can fulfill what they were meant to fulfill, that they can use themselves differently, more effectively, and with more choices. With the parallel thinking of Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers, Satir developed a belief system or world perception that advocated a faith in human beings and their ability to manage their life forms of strength, inner motivation, and personal responsibility. Universal patterns of coping, she discovered: placating, blaming, super reasonable, and irrelevant. She believed that our coping patterns came from our primary caregivers and the triad experience of mom and dad and child. She believed that everybody did the best they could, and their modeling and experiences pushed them to cope incongruently and dysfunctionally. Behavior is the only external manifestation of striving to survive or to cope the best that we can, even if the behavior is dysfunctional or even violent. The placating stance, when a person's under stress, agrees to whatever is suggested, no matter what she feels or believes. She or he believes that in order to be alone with others, they have to have their way. The body stance is down on one knee and the hand over the heart and one arm stretched to a plating manner. Super reasonable in this stance ignores the feelings and needs of everybody, including himself. The person goes by rules, shoulds, and the position is to hold the head up high, stand completely erect and stiff, and look over people, not at them. The blaming stance is that no matter what happens, it's always the other person's fault. The stance is with hands on the hip, one arm extended with the finger pointing. Irrelevant would be somebody who might be on the fourth floor. Satir had a strong belief that change is always possible, especially internal change at the levels of learning, yearnings, and longings, expectations, perceptions, attitudes, feelings, and feelings about feelings. Satir's contributions, number one, she introduced and promoted conjoint family therapy into the mainstream of therapy practice. 2, she brought a process approach to therapy that gave a major alternative to content and problem-solving approaches. 3, she provided a whole health focus to therapy by promoting a view of the world and of people that builds on possibilities, internal resources, personal choice, and self-worth. She developed a 3-generational approach to family therapy that has major transformational results. She used experiential learning as a dependable and viable model for change. She promoted and developed the use of the right hemisphere intervention as humor, meditation, touch, voice tone, sculpting, and effect. She put focus on the therapist and the use of self instead of any specific technique as the major change event. She developed a way of changing dysfunction and communication patterns to healthy patterns. She expounded a whole report of transformational therapy while working on various levels of people's internal processes, such as yearnings, expectations, perceptions, and feelings. She provided hope for thousands of clients and therapists that change is possible. I'm going to take a look at the iceberg, the personal iceberg that she used. The behavior or action or story is on top of the iceberg, and that's what you can see. Underneath are things that you don't see. So it is feelings and what feelings about. So getting them to identify their feeling, and sometimes a feeling is underneath of that. So for myself, the feeling of anger, underneath of that anger was guilt or teachings that I thought had that women should never get angry. So that's what, you go down one more level to get them to talk about the feeling. Then there would be perceptions, beliefs, assumption, thoughts, and ideas that to explore. Expectations of self and other, then to the core of who we are, our yearnings for love, acceptance, freedom. And this is through our true self. So the 5 essential elements of the model, as spelled out by Banman 2006, is that the experience is experiential. It means that the client is experiencing the impact of a past event in the present. As well, at the same time, the client has experienced his own positive life energy in the present. Often, body memory is accessed as one of the ways to help client experience their impact. It is only when clients are experiencing both the negative energy of the impact and the positive energy of their life force in the now that an energetic shift can take place. It's systemic. Therapy must work within the intrapsychic and interactive systems in which the client experiences his or her life. The intrapsychic system includes the emotions, perceptions, expectations, yearnings, and spiritual energy of the individual, all would interact with each other in a systemic manner. The interactive system include the relationship, both past and present, that the person has experienced in his life. The two systems interact with each other. A change in one impacts the other. However, transformational change is an energetic shift in the intrapsychic system, which then changes the interactive systems. The therapy is positively directional. The therapists help to reframe perceptions, generate possibilities, hear the positive message of universal yearnings, and connect the client to his or her positive life force. The focus is on health and health and possibilities. Appreciating their own resources and anticipating growth rather than pathologizing or problem solving. It is change focused. The focus of Satir therapy is on transformational change. The process questions asked throughout the entire session are change related. So you're having this struggle with somebody. What do you need to do to change what the outcome would be? Such as what would have to change in order for you to forgive yourself. Give the client the opportunity to explore uncharted waters inside of their own intrapsychic system. Self of the therapist. As previously mentioned, the congruence of the therapist is essential for the client to access their own spiritual energy. When therapists are congruent, the client's see them or experience them as caring, accepting, hopeful, interested, genuine, authentic, and actively engaged. They use their own creative life energy in the form of a metaphor, humor, self-disclosure, sculpting, and many other creative interventions. Also comes from the connection that therapists have their own spiritual self when in a congruent state. The references I have for this is Banman, 2008, Satir Transformation Systemic Therapy, Banman, 2006, Applications of Satir Growth Model, Haber-Ross, 2002, Virginia Satir, an Integrated and Humanistic Approach, and Contemporary Family Therapy. So how does this connect to the sand tray? The synergy of these three elements has resulted in neuroscience in the sand tray. It's quick, profound, lasting, and achievable. According to the little 2017. It works with children and it works with adults. We will now take a look at these elements to explore how they informed and developed each other. How the sand tray therapy informed and developed the Satir model and neuroscience. Number one, neuroscience is the newest form of the three, Alan Shore, 2012, Bonnie Badenoch, Stephen Porges, and many others have introduced developments in interpersonal neurobiology. These developments are interpersonal neurobiology. These developments interpersonal are hugely influential in all areas of the field and are all embraced by NSST. They include right brain to right brain, body-based detachment, Shore 2021, attunement, Shore 2012, polyvagal theory, Porges 2011, co-regulation, Badenoch, nonverbal communication, Shore 2012, epigenetics, Lipton 2015, Bezel van der Dorp 2014, has added to our understanding of trauma and how it is stored in the body. The SST provides a framework in the form of the iceberg metaphor for asking positively directional, change-focused process questions of the client's feelings about the feelings, perception, expectations, and yearnings. In NSST, these questions are used in a new way of using the sand tray. These questions elicit awareness for the client of the underlying and self-perpetuating elements of self that maintain current unhelpful defensive defenses. NST stresses the use of self of the therapist. As in STST, working in the sand tray is experiential as it accesses novel metaphors of the unconscious systematically in time and space. In NST, sand tray uses play, imagination, and creativity with figurines in the sand tray to externalize the internal world of the clients as an implicit memories. The figurines resonate with internal energy patterns stored as images. Once revealed in the sand tray as a novel metaphor, they can be transformed. The classic use of the sand tray has informed and developed the Satir model by offering the concepts of images of the unexpressed and unconscious parts of self. It allowed the physical experience of exploration of all parts of the iceberg metaphor, including especially that part of the client's internal world and below the waterline. Sand tray therapy has informed neuroscience in the same way. So by facilitating the expression of the implicit memories in the unconscious. Sand tray therapy offers to neuroscience a plethora of right brain images where dissociated and defensive parts can be found. And those defensive parts, as I have mentioned earlier, are the stances of blaming, placating, super reasonable. When their defensive parts can be found, they can be explored, understood, embraced. NST has informed and developed both the Satir model and neuroscience by offering the figurines in the sand tray as an external expression of the internal world of the client. Two names that are associated with the origins of sand tray are Margaret Lowenweld, Dora Kalf. She lived from 1904 to 1990. It is commonly agreed among play therapists and sand tray therapists that Kalf, 2003, first used the term free and protective space. And NST sand tray provides that place. This free and protective space enables the clients to connect with their unconscious and to express pre-verbal experience and blocked energies. Mitchell and Friedman, 1994. NST goes further and incorporated the work of Lipton by suggesting the release of blocked energy. Downey is available to create new proteins and new neural pathways through epigenetics, that is, by changing the expression of unexpressed genes. So our role of therapists, as Madeline DeLittle said, is that we are brain changers. We are brain surgeons. So in addition to providing a free and protected space, another similar part of known field, CALF, and NST use of the sand tray is the figurine is to express the unconscious. The NST approach links this idea up with neuroscience by saying that therapy has to allow for the implicit, unconscious expression of the right brain self-system. Shore 2012. And that the sand tray facilitates this process through the creation symbols and pictures of the unconscious, implicit right brain system, as Madeline Delida said in her book of 2019. Further with the sand tray, NST encourages the tracing by the therapist of the relationship between changes in the client's body and the choice and placement of the figurines. So you're constantly going back to your body. So when they move something in the sand tray, even just putting something into the there's going to be a bodily. So you can ask them, what are you sensing in your body right now as you pick that figurine, or if you move that figurine in the sand tray. It's not just the shifts in the client's body and the client's world that the therapist's understanding of what is happening for the client. There are also shifts in the sand tray, new arrivals, removals, rearrangements, and changes in size and proximity of figurines. With the sand tray, the therapist has a whole palette of non-verbal visual information. The therapist is constantly watching the client, watching for tears, change in body posture. So we're all tracking those changes in the body. The new array of information resources in NST is drawing from the classic sand tray approach. Neuroscience produces, the author believes, some emergent properties. One of these is touches. The client, with their nonverbal facial expression and voice tone, including the placement of their figurines in the tray, nudges parts of the therapist's embodied mind in the direction of the client's intuitively knows what is needed. The therapist's role is to make sense of these touches and help the client find the word for the novel metaphors. The exploration of the figurines in the sand tray in NST is based on the postmodernist emphasis on the collaborative relationship between the therapist and the client, and the notions that the client is the expert. The client-therapist's relationship is one of author-editor, as explained by Gallerani and Diabis 2011. In terms of other emergent properties that none of the three elements promoted on their own, NST raised the term novel metaphor to a central place in its use of classic sand tray therapy. A figurine is a metaphor, the part of the client's internal world needs to no explanation. The term novel metaphor does. A novel metaphor is an unconventional, unfamiliar, unique image concept outside of the unconscious, outside of conscious awareness. Novel metaphor resonates with stored energy patterns that have no words and embody mind, as in DeLittle said in her book of 2020. Of in particular importance is the concept in NST that a figurine does not represent part of the client's internal world. Rather, it is the part. Through projective identification of parts of the client into the figurine become that part. The power of the novel metaphor becomes from the process. Another emergent property of NSD is the central process in therapy, which is the use of enactments of the metaphor. These profound moments in the sand tray bring about a shift in energy and a release of the binding defenses that have been keeping the client safe, but have become too large and constraining. These shifts in energy and the release of the defenses are reported by the client and observed by the therapist as nonverbal changes in the body language, facial expressions, and voice tone, all in DeLittle's book. How has the Satir model informed and developed sand tray and neuroscience? One of Virginia's contribution was her playfulness. Her work gave the world a multi-causal and multi-dimensional, iterative way of being with clients. Virginia used humor and yet was very respectful to her clients. Another contribution of NST has been the process questions of the iceberg metaphor to inform and develop classic sand tray therapy. The STST model has provided a set of questions to access the ways of keeping safe and access implicit memories of the unconscious that are the two areas of focus of neuroscience. As well, the STST model promotes the concepts of the use of self, as explained by John Banman, personal communication, which is emphasized in the therapeutic right brain attachment in neuroscience, Shore 2012. NST takes the process questions of the iceberg metaphor and the concept of the use of self and integrate them in a new and practical application of neuroscience in the sand tray. Virginia Satir describes people under stress taking up coping stances to make sense of their experience and to avoid or survive a perceived threat. These coping stances have a positive intention of survival. The Satir model uses the iceberg metaphor of internal and external to identify the underlying motivating factors of perception, feelings about the feelings, expectations, and yearnings that drive problematic defenses. People do the best they can at any moment, even when they've done something very negative or very destructive. It is the coping that they were capable of at that moment, and it's a reflection of their level of worth. Therefore, there's no reason to blame them for their past failures. Helping them experience their positively directional life's energy will help them make new choices for the present and future, as Banman said in his 2006. In ST, the therapist helps the clients to perceive previously unrecognized inner resources, such as courage, trust, self-love, determination, and while remaining consciously aware of them, to revisit the impact of the experience. The client's new take on the situation reframes how he perceives it in himself. Internal processes that occur in response throughout the systems of cognition, physiology, and behavior. He experienced them as positive and enduring, changed himself and consequently and others around him, since the term Satir transformative system therapy. In NST, the process occurs in the same way, but attention is directed toward the figurine and the client's body language. The therapist doesn't interpret the sound trait image, but instead doesn't interpret the images, but instead asks specific Satir process questions, such as the placement and the choice of figurines. So, for example, somebody might put a figurine being really small and along with other big ones, and that's how they perceive them in that moment, as feeling vulnerable. The process of looking at parts of themselves in the sand tray allows the client to perceive themselves a new way, and subsequently adding, removing, or changing figurines. The emphasis in NST is that the client recreates their images of how they have kept themselves safe. NST is clear about the importance of body in the process of change. For the neuroscientist in NST, the body is important. As the client makes changes in the placement and choice of figurines, he experiences internal somatic changes that parallel the action in the action in the sand tray. The client is invited to experience these changes in awareness.